Now, for much more on our second part of the discussion, we still have Taiwo Oyedele, Fiscal Policy Partner and Africa Tax Leader of PriceWaterhouseCoopers. We are looking at the Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the Central Bank of Nigeria, which is currently holding today, and will have the final decision for the year announced tomorrow. Thank you very much, Taiwo Oyedele, for still staying with us. Now, we have the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting for the year 2021 wrapping up gradually. Conversations are intense at this point in time just to see how to steer the conversation around the economic recovery on a more sustainable path. We've seen the CBN MPC hold the rate at 11.5% and other key parameters are over a while now. Do you see the same retention of stance?
Yes, thank you. I'll say yes. I think that's the expectation of many analysts. Because if you think about it, do we have the right conditions for us to either raise rates? Do we have the right conditions to reduce rates? I'll say, I'm afraid the answer is no. If you reduce rates, you have to then worry more about inflation, even though inflation has been moderating now, I think for maybe about 6 or 7 months. But if you are still at 16%, that is very high. Very high because the target is to be in the maybe the upper end of a single digit. So we're not there yet. Should we be increasing rates? The answer is, if your growth is slow and fragile, you cannot be raising rates. So I would imagine, my expectation is that the Monetary Policy Committee will maintain rates and allow the economic recovery that we have to continue. And perhaps, of course, and I'll say the CBN has done well in terms of trying to come up with different initiatives, even though we sometimes criticize them by not coordinating well with the other authorities, particularly the Fiscal authority. But I think in fairness to them, they have been, very creative. They have been very active in trying to complement these policy rates with different other interventions, which maybe if not for that, we could have been in a bigger problem than we are in now, economically speaking.
The CBN MPC would also pride itself in the fact that they've managed to steer the economy away from recession and then to a gradual economic recovery growth path. But at the end of the day, they would also pride themselves in terms of having increased credit accessibility to the real sector of the economy. This has hit an all-time high. We would also see some of the agenda put on the plate today, looking at inflation, which has consistently declined as well. The GDP growth rate still at a positive trajectory. All of these form the state of the economy, with the CBN's MPC committee continues to work hard to ensure that we have things stay afloat. But at the end of the day, what do you think might be the likely changes or worry, especially with regards to cautions from the IMF? We've had issues around our borrowings. We've had issues around subsidy. Now, the latest report from the IMF is the call that by the early next year, we have to scrap up electricity subsidy and then fuel subsidy. Do you think these are too big of a task for the MPC to bring down these resolutions and government to take action all the way through?
Yeah, so maybe this is more of a political decision than something for the MPC, but very relevant in any way. So I am fully in support of the IMF's recommendation. I think we should have removed subsidy on petrol because, we say fuel product, but to be honest, it's just petrol. AGO is deregulated, kerosene is deregulated, aviation fuel, whatever it is. It's only just petrol. And even the electricity subsidy, we have a mentality in Nigeria that we have to move away from. And that mentality is that our people are poor and we must keep price artificially low so they can afford it. What happens with this mindset is that it is counterproductive. It does not encourage investment. The other mindset we could have is let prices go wherever they want to go, but we'll make sure that there's prosperity for our people such that no matter the amount, they'll be able to afford it. And I think that's a growth mindset. So we said inflation is moderating, but if you have inflation at 16%, it means that prices are higher today than they were yesterday. It does not mean that prices prices are coming down, because sometimes people misinterpret this. It means that prices are still going up, but at a slower pace than previously. And in a country where there's high unemployment, it means that poverty is increasing. With this in mind, should government be spending over 1 trillion naira subsidizing petrol that tends to benefit more middle class, upper class, and even more painful, the corrupt agents? Should we be spending our hard-earned money on that? Or if you put it differently, should we be borrowing? Because actually government is borrowing, close to more than half of what we're spending. So we're borrowing to provide a subsidy. So both electricity subsidy, petrol subsidy should go urgently. I think, having a plan of second half of next year, I don't know whether that is being political, because we should actually start taking steps now to remove the subsidy and see where do we invest those savings to impact the life of Nigerians meaningfully.
Okay, now, Mr. Oyedele, for the lack of time, let's wrap up our conversation now. We wouldn't forget easily, so many analysts can't forget easily, the CBN governor at some point this year during the resolutions reach is the fact that the MPC has gotten, or has exhausted most of the arsenals it has to be able to help pump up a new vigor into the economy. Do you see any new unorthodox tools or approaches coming to bear as we are steering the course ahead of 2022?
Yeah, so I think on one hand, I do agree with that. On the other hand, I'll say no, I disagree. And the reason I'll say that is, one thing that the monetary authorities have to do is to say, how do we restore investors' confidence, right? If today you come up with a list of what is not eligible for FX, tomorrow you come up with a new policy of what we can and cannot do. Capital and investment is just like human beings. They're looking for safety. They're looking for where they'll be fairly treated. And they're also competitive because there are other countries who are competing for the funds. So the monetary authorities, along with the other authorities and policymakers, have to pay attention to how do we restore investors' confidence. So if I have clarity that Naira will be a particular exchange rate, and not whether there is parallel market and NAFEX, then I'll be able to bring in my money. The way we have it today is that people are afraid that if you bring in your investment, there might be one-time significant devaluation, and then you suffer the consequences. So what is left in the arsenal is how do we restore investors' confidence?
And do you think matters around forex liquidity is also going to be a very big challenge as well? We've seen the CBN trying to ensure that we have sustainability within the market. But at the end of the day, we still have the big elephant in the room. Broad exchange operators no longer have these allocations. It goes directly to the banks. How do you see us wrapping up the year with this initiative? It was a tough stance to take for the CBN, but certain actions have to be curbed.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I think that was a bad decision. I think it was right, because that does not in any way reduce the dollar liquidity we have. They're just saying, instead of getting your dollar from A, I will now allocate it to B. So it doesn't change, in my view, it doesn't change the amount of dollar liquidity that is available to the country. And then if banks, to the extent that they are better regulated, would ensure that we don't have people buying dollars for speculation, for illicit stuff and fraudulent means, then that actually should be positive for the economy. Now, the issue is that in the long term, the only way we can solve this liquidity problem in a sustainable manner is to be exporting. And we talked about inconsistency today around policy. Government just introduced a VAT modification order that says when you export from Nigeria, it's no longer zero rated, it's now VAT exempt. What that means is the cost of exporting has just increased. The question is, where is the coordination? You need to do more export to earn foreign exchange so that you can have liquidity, yet you have fiscal policies discouraging export. So again, we need to just come back to how do we ensure that as a country, we move in the same direction rather than pulling in different directions that seem to limit our positive impact that we're making.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, for joining us on the show today. We hope the necessary authorities are listening and it's time to take action. Thank you once again.
Thank you.